One of the significant changes with PowerSchool version 23.5 are security enhancements. So we want to make sure to have a video to step you through how to handle those security changes. The Nebraska PowerSchool team takes the security of your students' data very seriously. As such, all of our team members have unique passwords for each of the 97 districts we serve, which are managed with a password manager, so they're protected from any evildoers who might try to access your students' information via our logins. You'll also notice that when we use a server to demonstrate any actions in PowerSchool, like we do during our webinars and in-person trainings, we use a test server where the identifying information student information, sorry, I misspoke, has been scrubbed. In that vein, one of the significant changes with PowerSchool core version 23.5 relates to improving the security of student information within PowerSchool as a whole. However, in doing so, this can complicate procedures that your district has used in the past to communicate with students, parents, and teachers, and just to function as a school. So that means we need to talk through some solutions. That's what we're here for today. So fields affected include the student password field, the student_web_password field is no longer exportable in PowerSchool version 23.5. That means if you had that field referenced in any object reports in the past, you'll just see asterisks instead of any sort of data. It's hashed in every view within PowerSchool. It's hashed anywhere you try to export it. This is done so that outside evildoers can't get that information, but that's what complicates things for us as actual district users. Other changes, you cannot mass assign it using the mass assign function or the modify function, but you can still import that information. So you can still do a mass import of student passwords to get that information into PowerSchool or into your other systems. You just can't use the mass assign function. If PowerSchool is your identity provider, all students grades 9 and above will be required to reset that admin password. So if you import a bunch of passwords, all of your 9th through 12th graders will be required to reset that password the next time they log into PowerSchool. This can be extended down to younger grades. In fact, the Nebraska PowerSchool Cooperative recommends that you extend this down to whatever the lowest grade is in your secondary building. So whether that might be 6th grade or 7th grade, we would recommend doing it for your entire secondary building or buildings as a whole. Why? Because if PowerSchool is your identity provider, your teachers can still reset those passwords and they will be more secure for your students moving forward. What do I mean by resetting this grade level? So in PowerSchool, so notice I'm on a test server with all fictional students and fictional student information. My password is managed by a hashed password manager, so that data is all secure. If I want to change what grade level is set, I'm going to do that using password rules. So this is where I can see my minimum password security, and under the student password management tab is where I can set the minimum grade where things are reset. You'll notice in my grade 9 through 12 buildings, those are default set so that all grades have to reset their passwords, and I cannot change that. I can go lower in schools that have lower grades, but I can't, but 9 is the minimum. Grade 9 is the minimum for that reset rule. All right, moving forward from student passwords, please notice the student_web_password field is different from the Guardian web password or the access password that parents need to connect to their students' information within PowerSchool. Let me show you what I mean. If I look at a student, and again, these are all fictional students, so please know it's all fictional information. Under their student profile is where I can now see that access accounts page that we've had throughout in the past. The student password, this is the field that is now hatched, that I cannot see no matter what I type in there. As opposed to the access password. This is the information that parents need to be able to connect to their students' information in their app. So please notice this student password field is the one that is affected with this change. The access password field has not been affected by this change. What does that look like in a student letter? Well, a lot of our districts have a parent account letter or a web ID and password letter or a secure sign-on letter or something like that. In there, you can see both versions of that letter. So let me show you what that means. So you can see the access account password and that the student password is no longer accessible in that letter. So that's the difference between those two fields. Student password, no longer exportable. Access password, that one's still exportable. All right, let me get back to my PowerSchool screen here. Maybe. That's the one I want. Okay. So that's part one. Teacher passwords were also affected by this version update. They are no longer exportable. That password has always been hashed in our PowerSchool views, so that's not a change, but something to notice. And it can no longer be mass assigned using that function. Again, it can still be imported. You just can no longer use the mass assign function. Teachers have always been and continue to be forced to reset any admin set password the first time they log in. So functionality on the teacher side hasn't changed much, just the exportability has changed. One other change, all password fields are now directed according to the complexity rules that you can set within PowerSchool. So these changes affect any password, whether that's an admin password, a teacher password, a student password, any password that you set within PowerSchool, parent passwords included. Any password that's within PowerSchool will be required to meet those complexity rules. Those recommendations have increased as well. So we recommend an 8-character minimum. You need 1 upper, 1 lower, 1 special, and 1 number. So those requirements of types of characters have increased. And it now checks for well-known passwords, i.e. password won't work anymore. So we have to get creative even on those admin ones that we set. So where do I set that again? That's again within that password rules page within PowerSchool. So in PowerSchool, and again, I'm on my training server, under system and under security is where I can get to that password rules. And so there's where you see that 8-character minimum. The default is to have all of these checked, that it's required for 1 upper, 1 lower, and so on and so forth. The expiration rules and the reuse rules are still district directed. So just FYI on that page. Now, please know, we understand that these changes will significantly affect the processes that you've used in the past to communicate initial or even long-term passwords to students. We recognize this. Trust me, I've sat in that 7th grade classroom with the student who doesn't want to do anything that says, hey, Cecilia, I can't log into my math homework because I don't know my password. Sweet, here's your password. Well, from now on, me as a teacher, the students have a reset password link. So instead of me as an adult having to be responsible for their password, I can say, well, that's all right, student who doesn't feel like doing anything today. You can hit the reset password link. Problem solved. So that they can continue working in class and I can continue moving forward with all of my students. So the reset password is really going to come in handy, but that also doesn't get us around that initial, how do I get them a password in the first place, challenge that we tech people really have to deal with. So those are the solutions that we're going to talk through today. And we're going to talk through those in the order from most secure solution down to the least secure solution that we've come up with. All right. So the most secure option is to use a single sign-on solution. Single sign-on solutions make it possible for your students to only have to remember one password to access all the different systems that they use within your district. That means you only have to communicate it once. They only have to remember it once. You have one place, go to simplify solution. It does take some setup. So there's a con for you, is it does take some setup and it does take some maintenance. But we've had a lot of districts find success using Google, Microsoft, ClassLink, Clever, Active Directory, also known as an LDAP solution. We've had multiple single sign-on solutions with which our districts have found success. They are secure, they protect your students' information, and they simplify things from your students' perspective. So they are a great solution for this new challenge that we're facing. So that's our first and most secure option. Our second and slightly less secure solution is to use a formula to generate your students' passwords. This means PowerSchool remains your identity provider. PowerSchool continues to maintain your student passwords. However, you need some ways to communicate those to your students if that's your identity provider. So depending on the grade level set on that student password management page, the students will be required to reset whatever password you create with the first time they log in. But if PowerSchool remains the identity provider, teachers now have the ability to reset their students' passwords when needed. So again, in my example of my favorite 7th grade student, oh, Sasala, I don't know my password. Then Sasala can go reset that password in the classroom. I don't have to send them down the hallway to the tech office to get their password reset. I can do that in my math classroom so we can continue moving forward and getting things done. So pros of this solution, it still protects your student data from those outside evildoers because you're using a formula specific to your district to create these passwords. But that formula is understandable to district personnel. So it's understandable by the humans within your district who know the formula, but protected from those outside people that don't need to attack your students. Cons of this, well, the humans doing enrollment need to know the formula so that they can use that to generate your students' initial passwords. Another con, you do have to reset all your student passwords. But again, that can be done via an import. So yes, it's a hassle, but it's a manageable one. So let me talk you through how this works. When a student gets enrolled in your district, your enrollment person will still assign their username just as they always have, whether that's last name dot first name or last name first initial or whatever your district has used in the past. Then they will type or import a formulaic password using data contained within PowerSchool. Using other fields from PowerSchool enables your human users to create that formula quickly. It also enables you to use that same formula in object reports in order to share that information with parents or students or teachers as needed. Because the fields you use can vary by district, this is what helps protect that information from those outside evildoers. They don't know what fields you're using to generate this formula. And again, this formula can either be human generated at a glance, or you can use Excel to generate this formula for a mass group of users. Thus, when you're reassigning passwords for your whole district, you can use Excel to generate those passwords for everyone and import them at the same time. So let me show you what I mean. My formula for my sample district that's here on my test server is going to be the first 3 letters of the student's last name, all uppercase. And then the first 3 letters of their first name, all lowercase. So there's my capitals and my lowercase requirements. Then the first 3 digits of their student number. So again, there's my number requirement, but I'm disguising it a little bit. And last but not least, an exclamation point, because I require a special character. So I have my types of requirements covered, but these are all pieces of information that I can see in a student header. So if I'm the enrollment person, I can see first three of their last, first three of their first three of their number, exclamation point. That's a formula I can understand as a human. It's also a formula PowerSchool can understand as soon as I put that coding into an object report. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to my test server, it's not going to behave on that tab. Let me go to a different tab. Here we go. If I go to my test server, and we looked at this with Johnny here just a minute ago, that on his letter, we could see that access password, but we couldn't see his student password. So I need to generate what his student password is going to be. So his first three of his last name, all capital letters, I can see that up here. So capital A, capital B, capital B. The first three of his first name, all lowercase. So lowercase j, lowercase o, lowercase h. The first three digits of his student number. Oh, I can see that right here. 201. And the special character we're using in my fictional district is an exclamation point. Exclamation point. So I just reset Johnny's password. No problem. Well, all right, so he's here. He has his password. It's still hashed, so I can't see it. Okay, but I just reset his password, right? So I could go print the letter now. The problem is that's still hashed. So I need to change my letter to pull my formula the same way. So I'm going to go to System, I'm going to go to Reports, and I'm going to go to my form letters, because I happen to know this is a form letter. And I'm going to change my coding from pulling this student web password to pulling my formula that I just set. And in order to copy that, give me a minute here. I'm just going to copy that. And, oops, I hit the wrong button. Forgive me. And paste that into my form letter. So notice, last name, all uppercase, first three digits. First name, all lowercase, first three digits. Student number, first three digits, and an exclamation point. So now, when I go to my reports and I rerun this report, I can see my new formulaic password. So I can share that with the student, I can share that with the parents, I can share that with the homeroom teacher, whoever I think needs to know it. I can share that information without storing it in a different place in PowerSchool, without doing anything else. Using that formula allows me to pull that information without sharing it with outside evildoers. All right, last but not least, our final suggestion and our least secure suggestion uses the same idea. Use a formula to generate new passwords for every single student. So that's part one. It still has that security aspect of you can increase the requirements of your secure passwords. But now, instead of keeping those outside of PowerSchool or in your human brains or somewhere else, you'll keep them in a new custom field within PowerSchool. So the pros of this, it's in a custom field. So you can view it, you can export that field just like you have in the past. You can refer to it in an object report just like you have in the past. The cons of this, since it's not one of those secured fields, you run the risk of outside evildoers being able to access your students' information and steal their identity when they're too young to even have any sort of financial security. So there is some danger in doing this. The other risk of this using a custom field is that a human has to remember to keep this field updated. So they don't just set the password on the password page, they also have to go update this custom field. So while it can simplify some parts of our processes, you run that human risk of forgetting, because we're all human and we all make mistakes sometimes. So you run that human risk of forgetting to maintain your custom field. All right. So we know all of these are challenges. We know all of these are changing your processes. The advantage is that your student data will be so much more secure with these improvements. And hopefully these options will give you some ways to work through this new challenge. So again, just to quickly review, our most secure option is to use a single sign-on solution. Our second most secure option is to use a formula to generate your student passwords and then use that formula in reports and exports as needed. Our third and least secure option is to, again, use a formula to generate that password, but to then store it in a custom field within PowerSchool. You are welcome to add that to PowerSchool yourself, or you can send us a ticket and the Nebraska's PowerSchool team will be happy to help you work through these security solutions.